All right, welcome into another edition of the Pat Dooley Show. Certainly not a great weekend in Jacksonville for the Florida Gators. My weekend was actually pretty good other than the game. Avid Brothers rocked it on Thursday night. It was great having lunch with Danny Werfel, who, by the way, is doing a lot better. He's about, I would say about 90, 95%. He's close to being back to normal after his bout with Guillain-Barré syndrome. And I talked to a lot of Gators and dogs up there at Danny Werfel's annual golf tournament. And then that night, seeing a lot of good people at Sawgrass Marriott, always great. And believe it or not, the drive into the Everbank Field or whatever it's called was not bad. I was surprised. Usually it's kind of bad. So everything was great right up until the game. And I'm not saying that because Florida lost. I'm saying it because it was a hard game to watch. No flow to the game. It was 24 penalties, 9 turnovers, and clock stoppages. It seems like every year for that Florida-Georgia game, the clock up there, the play clock, goes out at some point. It's usually 2 or 3 times. And you know, it's not like they have an NFL team there or something. Technically, I don't know if they count as an NFL team, but the Jaguars do play there. You'd think they would be able to get it right. At any rate, the game itself, I talked to some people about this even before the game. You just kept wondering when it was going to happen, when playing this style of football was going to catch up to Florida, and it did tremendously for, not tremendously good, but tremendously bad for the Gators with the 6 turnovers. You think about it, even with 6 turnovers, they had a chance to win that game. And that's how well the defense played, especially in the red zone. But at the same time, you knew kind of eventually they were have to have a game like that where they just didn't quite, the lack of offense was going to hurt them. And if they turned it over a few times, I mean, it's hard to go a whole year and be that efficient offensively with turnovers. Still, nobody saw 6 coming. I don't think anybody saw Jeff Driscoll turn it over 4 times, but the interception he threw at the end of the half was brutal. That killed him. And he's got to know better than that. I know he's a sophomore. He's making his 7th start as a quarterback, and he's been through some battles, obviously going to Tennessee, going to Texas A&M, LSU, South Carolina at home. But he played like a guy in his 7th start on Saturday. We'll see if he can bounce back, because this is a big bounce back week for Florida, regardless of what happens with Georgia. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you Georgia's going to lose to Ole Miss, but they could. But even if they don't and they beat Auburn and they win the East and go to Atlanta and get seal clubbed by Alabama, even if all that happens, if you can go 7-1 in your 2nd year in the SEC East, that's a pretty good accomplishment for Will Muschamp. You win this game, you got the 2 revenue games coming up. That puts you at 10 wins. 10-win seasons are important. I don't care. I know that Spurs last year he went 10-2, and one reason he left is everybody was disappointed. Nobody's going to be disappointed with 10-2. Are you happy that Florida lost that game? No, of course not. You want them to win it, but 10-2 is still a great season, and nobody that I know of had Florida going 10-2 this year. So big win for the Gators if they can get it this week. They need to beat Missouri. Missouri, of course, a team that has struggled. We wondered how A&M and Missouri would do coming in to this league. A&M's done pretty well. There are 2 losses, of course, to LSU and Florida, but they've just put 63 up on Auburn. Missouri, not so well. And I don't think their team was quite as good as Texas A&M's, and their schedule's been tougher, possibly. But no matter what, I mean, to lose to Vandy at home was certainly a blow. But here's the bottom line. They've got James Franklin back. Florida's got to be ready to play. They've got to come out and play in front of their home crowd, really excited, and play with a lot of energy and play with a lot of poise, and just shake that game off. That game, I know how it is. I got Florida fans who are still today talking about that game and not this game. And I don't think it's going to be a full stadium for a noon game. Those are tough. Students won't get up and show up. We know that. I personally am in the way they've attended some games this year, I'm in favor of taking some of their tickets away, reducing the amount. If you're not going to come, why should you get tickets? But the bottom line is it's going to be a game where the Gators have to motivate themselves, and we'll see how they do. It's another test. That's the way the SEC is. Certainly, a lot of things changed last week in college football. We saw 5 unbeatens get beat. The BCS is, you have 3 teams that have a chance to play Alabama, but of course we don't know if Alabama's going to win. Who knows? LSU wins, and Oregon loses a game, and Kansas State loses to Oklahoma State this week, and Notre Dame loses to USC, for example. I know we're asking a lot of USC, and I'm not asking for that. I'm just saying, and LSU's playing for the national title. Who knows? That's the way it is. LSU, Alabama certainly will be a big game this week. So should be another fun weekend of college football. Last weekend, again, not fun for the Gators, but it was an amazing week in college football, and it helped shape what we're going to see down here down the stretch. All right, it's time for three things. Okay, it's time for three things, and here are the three things I think this week. Number one, the risk reward for coaches who want to cheat is over. Well, maybe not over, but it's going to be a lot harder for them. The NCAA this week came out with a new set of rules, and one thing that it's going to allow them to do is punish cheaters even harder. 2 to 4 year punishments, 2 to 4 year bowl bans, millions of dollars in fines, being able to get a coach after he's gone somewhere else. All these things, because there are coaches out there who say, you know what? I'm going to cheat. I'm going to get these guys. I'm going to win a championship, and then if they want to come get me later, big deal, I'll be going somewhere else. It's going to be a lot harder for that to happen. I don't think it happens a ton, but it does happen, where coaches feel like the risk is worth the reward. Well, the NCAA has really been pushing for this with Mark Emmert to try to make it a lot harder to cheat, get a reward, and the risk isn't that big a deal. So we'll see how that takes place, but hopefully this helps curb some of the cheating. Number two, I'm concerned because I like to think outside the box on my Heisman, but not way outside the box. Like some people will pick somebody and you kind of go, why waste your vote there? But I like to think not just automatically the favorites and at least consider everybody. But when I look at my ballot and I look at other people's ballots, it's almost the same. I've got Colin Klein 1, I've got Monty Te'o from Notre Dame 2, and I've got A.J. McCarron 3. I've had it that way for 2 weeks. I noticed Sports Illustrated's got it that way. I saw a guy on ESPN that had his ballot the same way, so I'm a little concerned. But again, there's a lot of time left. There's a chance Colin Quinn could go lay an egg this week. Colin Quinn, the guy from Saturday Night Live. No, Colin Klein. There's a chance that, if Johnny Manziel still could sneak into my ballot. If Jarvis Jones dominates in the SEC championship game, the way he played against Florida, I still have him just outside my ballot. He could get in. So still a long way to go, but I'm a little worried. I'm thinking too much like normal people. And number three, there's no question Notre Dame is for real. I questioned them all year. I kept saying, well, here's where they'll get their comeuppance. Well, when they play Miami, Miami's got great athletes. They'll be able to score them. Every week, you think that. And this week, everybody was saying, well, Oklahoma will take care of Notre Dame and knock them out of the national championship picture. Notre Dame was amazing. I mean, Oklahoma got hurt by an early holding call that cost them a touchdown. But I watched the fourth quarter, about the last half of the third quarter and the fourth quarter when I got back to my hotel. And Notre Dame was a better team. I mean, they are really good. And the more I watch them, the more I'm convinced they're really good. So we'll see how that all plays out. Again, they've got Pittsburgh this week, and Pittsburgh's playing better. But other than that, USC is about the only thing in their way. And if they go 12-0 and have a chance to play Alabama in the national title game, I don't care what Oregon's done. I don't care what Kansas State's done. There's going to be a huge, I don't want to say movement. It's going to be, where all these voters are going to say, I really would want to see Notre Dame, Alabama. That'll be cool. That'll be fun. That'll be the best game possible. Notre Dame, Alabama for historical reasons. Certainly Oregon, Alabama is a game I want to see for football reasons. But people are going to want the backstory more. So we'll see, but we're too early to worry about that. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk to our panel, Mike DiRocco from ESPNGatorNation.com and Mark Long from the Associated Press. He covers the Gators and the Jaguars, but we're not going to ask him any Jaguar questions. But he covers the Gators for the Associated Press. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back to the Pat Dooley Show. A great panel for you today. To my left, Mike DiRocco from ESPN Gators Nation, and to my further left, Mike Long from the Associated Press, who covers the Gators. And we're not all wearing black in mourning of Florida's loss. It's just a coincidence. It's cold out.
It is a little chilly.
I like it like that. All right, let's go to the first topic. Number one, the obvious question in everybody's mind, does Florida bounce back, Mike? I mean, they put so much into that game. You kind of wonder if where they are mentally this week.
Yeah, I think they do, though. I mean, they've kind of handled they handled, the pressure of being one of the better teams after beating LSU. So I think they'll be able to handle this disappointment. And Muschamp's one of those excitable, crazy guys, as we've seen. So I just can't see this team really coming out flat. And if they do, I'm sure he'll scream his head off. And
excitable?
Yeah,
Will?
I mean, I think they'll be fine. You know, if they don't play well against Missouri, people will automatically say that, but I don't think that'll be the case.
Well, they haven't played well against anybody. I mean, they have not had a game where you went, wow, this team is really special. I mean, and not taking anything away from them. A great job to get to 7-1 at this point, but they haven't had a game where you went offense, defense, special teams. Everything's been clicking.
South Carolina was the closest. You know, they looked pretty good there. Obviously, Kentucky for obvious reasons. But the reality is they will bounce back, and they're going to bounce back because of one thing. They're playing Missouri, and Missouri's been awful in the league, awful against good teams, and they're going to take advantage of that. You know, I don't think that the noon start is good for them. This is not a program that's played particularly well with a noon kickoff, and we all know the stands won't be filled, especially in the student section. But but you know, so there are reasons there that they might, you know, have a little bit of a setback or a slow start. But I think they're going to be fine because of the opponent. The opponent's just been really bad in SEC play. Yeah,
one win, and of course that came against Kentucky. And Kentucky kicked it around a lot. And I think it's important that Florida gets off to a good start, just because you don't want that lingering feeling. One thing I know that won't happen is Missouri's not going to hit them as hard as Georgia did. I mean, Georgia came out there wanting to kill somebody, and to their credit, which is one reason we had 24 penalties in that game.
Yeah.
Number 2, more likely to be upset this week, Mark, Oregon by USC or Alabama by LSU. Both of those games are on the road for the favorites.
Yeah, I don't think either one of them is going to be upset, but if I had to bet on them, I'm taking, you know, USC has a chance to beat Oregon. USC's loaded. I mean, they've got the quarterback, they've got the receivers, they've got a good defense. They, you know, have played well in spurts here and there. Oregon still looks like, I mean, just looks like a juggernaut, absolute juggernaut. And this thing really looks like it's Alabama, Oregon destined. But we're going to see. Oregon certainly the bottom back into their schedule's loaded, and this is the first big test. And the reality is they probably have to get by them twice. You know, they have to get by them in the conference title game too. But this one on the road, you know, I think they could stumble. But again, I don't see it, but they could.
It's amazing that Southern Cal's already lost twice. Before the season, we were all kind of hoping they would lose one. And when they lost the one, you know, okay, now they're out.
They won't lose again, yeah.
They won't lose again, but who cares? But then they lose again. I mean, they're hard to figure. But, you know, it goes back, Mike, to the depth issue with them. They're down scholarships. When you are down scholarships, you can't rotate guys in as much. And we saw this with Florida last year.
Especially on the offensive and defensive lines, but more the defensive line. You know, you get tired, you get worn down, you start giving up plays in the fourth quarter.
Right.
You know, you start, you know, being bad fundamentally because you're so tired, and that's what's happened. And I do agree with Mark. I mean, I think, you know, that Oregon Southern Cal game. I mean, Southern Cal's got the offensive fireworks to go ahead and match Oregon, and that game is probably going to be like 45-40 anyway. Yeah, because I don't, you know, that Auburn LSU game. I mean, first 1-3, I think wins that one, and you know, I just don't see, you know, LSU offensively being able to do much of anything. You know, Mettenberger has really struggled this year, and you know, going up against that defense, yeah, I don't like that matchup.
Yeah, but you know.
By the way, he just pulled a Ryan Lochte.
He did.
You caught that too?
He cut the wrong team.
Auburn.
He said Auburn.
Nice job, Ryan. Nice job.
It feels so weird to be dry.
I'm not picking Auburn, by the way. I'll take Alabama.
That said, Tiger Stadium, where dreams go to die, right?
That is a pretty good goal.
And night game, yeah, you never know. I just don't think offensively they have a shot. Really.
Well, we have another question about that game later, but let's go to number 3, which is, and we'll start with you, Mike. Is there any way Georgia blows it, of course, to win the East and go to take their, what I think a lot of people feel they're beating by Alabama up in Atlanta? They've got to beat Ole Miss at home and Auburn on the road. It's part of the reason people like me pick Georgia to win the East is because of their schedule.
Schedule's not very good.
And their schedule, it's just the way it worked out. The computer spit it out. It's very soft, but is there a way they'll blow this thing?
I don't think so. I mean, they're better significantly than Ole Miss, and we all know the mess that's Auburn over there. I mean, if they're going to blow it, it's going to be against Ole Miss, because by the time they get to that game against Auburn, Auburn's going to be checked out. I mean, they are already checked out right now. Gene Chizik.
They only gave up 63 last week.
Gene Chizik is out. Everybody knows it. It's dead man walking. You know, it's a lot like, you know, what happened here in 04 when Zucker was fired. You know, and then the team just kind of sleptwalked through the first half of that Georgia game. But yeah, I mean, I don't think they blow it. They're good enough offensively to put up 40 against Ole Miss. And, you know, look, if Jarvis Jones shows up the way he showed up against Florida, I mean, he could probably single-handedly beat
They may
that
not put
group.
the other 10 guys out
It's
there.
unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, certainly Georgia's defense looks like, it's coming around.
This week.
Yeah, and listen, but there's cause for concern here if you're Georgia, because the defense hadn't played well and had given up 20 points in 6 of 7 previous before Florida. And Aaron Murray is turnover prone.
Right.
There's they could blow this thing. I would be more worried if I was a Georgia fan if that game was on the road, this week's game at Ole Miss as opposed to at home. I think between the hedges, I think Georgia would be a hard time messing this thing up.
It's funny to think, I never thought I'd say this, if Florida's offense had been just as good as Kentucky's against Georgia, they'd have won the game. But
5 turnovers, and they're driving down for the potential tying.
exactly.
Touchdown,
But that's just the way it is. Every game is its own game. So number 4, LSU is getting 9 points. Mark, would you take it?
I'll take Alabama minus 9. Absolutely. I don't care. I don't care that it's on the road. I don't care that it's at night. I don't care. I've seen Alabama play, and I'm trusting Nick Saban here, and that offensive line's really good. They're just rolling in running backs year in, year out, and the defense is just fabulous. I think it's going to be low scoring, but I don't know that. I think Alabama will score enough to cover the 9. Absolutely.
The funny thing about Alabama is one week they'll beat you this way, and next week they'll score early and then just kind of lose interest. Another week they'll not look great and give you hope early and then just blow you out that way.
Yeah. I think Alabama's winning the game, but I would take the 9 points with LSU. I mean, that is a lot, and I buy into a little bit of the magic of Death Valley. Miles is going to reach into his bag of tricks, come up with something. He'll be, grazing on the turf before the game. I mean, there's just something about it. I don't think they're going to win it, obviously, because the Mettenberger factor there is what's really going to hurt LSU. But that is a lot of points when you think about it.
Well, and the thing is, I think if LSU can keep it close, Alabama might have a little list in them. Just like, we've never been in this, but they haven't been in that position all year.
Here, I'll say this: LSU was a better team last year. And they should have lost both of those games by double digits.
If they make any field goals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so they're not. And then LSU's just not as good this year offensively. So that's why I take Alabama.
Yeah, because they don't have Jordan Jefferson.
Yeah, that is the most unbelievable. That is one of the biggest surprises in the SEC to me, that they're worse offensively.
I thought they would be a juggernaut. I really do with Mettenberger. Last question, Mike, we'll start with you. There's 7 bowl-eligible teams already in the SEC. Which one of these teams will join them? Vanderbilt, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Missouri, or Arkansas?
Wow, that's actually a pretty good question.
I thought the other 4 were pretty good, too.
Okay, yeah, I'll give you that. I like Vandy's chances, to be honest with you. I think that
Still got Wake left.
Yeah, I mean, and James Franklin is done a really good job there, and he's kind of changed a little bit of the culture there. I don't like Tennessee. I don't like Arkansas, and I don't like Missouri's another one that might be able to get a bowl eligible. But if I got to pick one of those 4, I'm going to take Ole Miss. I think Hugh Freeze has done a really, really good job there.
Yeah, we actually agree here. Maybe I'm wearing my Vandy colors. But, I think Vandy's the team there to pick based on the schedule, based on what we've seen. Vandy's been in, even some of its losses. Vandy's been in those games.
Other than Georgia game.
They won on the road and won at Missouri.
Yeah, so, Vandy's got a defense. It's almost like old school Vandy, the mid-'90s Vandy, where, you knew they were going to show up defensively. And, who knows what they do offensively. But, I like their chances because of the schedule.
Let me throw in a quick bonus question because I've been thinking about this. Quarterback of the year in the SEC. If you're voting all SEC quarterback, which I think you do, don't you? D-Rock?
I think so.
Yeah.
If I get the ballot anytime.
I know who I'm picking.
I think it's a 2-man battle.
Of course, yeah.
Who would you pick?
Alabama, Texas A&M. I'm going to take Alabama because he's been perfect for that team. He's been efficient. He, hasn't turned the ball over, and he's a game manager, the ultimate game manager. But when you're a game manager on a really good team, you're going to get a lot of votes.
A.J. McCarron is 3rd on my Heisman ballot right now, and a lot of it's because LSU stifled Johnny Manziel. Let's see what happens in this game with A.J. McCarron.
Yeah, see, and that's what I would like to see, but I still think what Johnny Manziel has done as a redshirt freshman in this league has been fantastic, and it's hard to argue with numbers. I mean, his numbers just pop off the stat sheet.
Tremendous.
Now, but you're right, and McCarron, has been fantastic, as has everyone else on that Alabama team. But I would like to see what he does against Alabama, and then, but right now, I mean, McCarron's probably your guy, but boy, I really want to see, Manziel, because he's just special.
He's going to get it eventually, I tell you that. Maybe I should think outside the box and put Barrett Jones on my Heisman ballot or something like that.
There you go. There you go.
Jarvis Jones should be on your Heisman
Yeah,
ballot,
well,
maybe.
that's a one-game thing, though. He hasn't been. He was that way early, then he got hurt, then he wasn't really back. I'm going to watch
Florida every week. He'd be a.
I know.
He's still projected to be one of the top 5 picks in the
I want to
NFL
see what he
draft.
does to finish this thing out before I make my vote. At any rate, that's going to do it for our panel. We really appreciate Mark Long and Mike DiRocco for coming in. We'll take a break, come back with the list. Okay, it's time for the list, and this week on the list I decided, because Florida and Missouri have only played one other time before this game coming up Saturday, and you can read all about it, or you may have already read about it in my Thursday column, the 1965 Sugar Bowl. So I looked at teams that Florida's only played one time and decided to give you my 5 favorite. So number 1 would be Oklahoma in 2008. I think you remember that game very well. Florida winning the national championship. Technically it was 2009 down in Miami. It's the only time they ever played Oklahoma. It was a great game, and I said at the time, and I still believe it, that was the best national championship for Florida because it was so hard. I know you beat FSU, your rival, that's great, but to gut that one out, I thought showed a lot about that football team. I wasn't sure that team could win a game like that, and they did. Number 2 is Oklahoma State, 1990. You remember that game, Steve Spurrier's opening game as the Florida coach. We didn't know what we were going to get, and what do? Boom, 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 right down the field. I remember Shane Matthews telling me that Steve asked him what he wanted to call on the first play, and he was like, a draw, a screen, something easy. And he goes, nah, we're going to throw it down the field. And he knew it was going to be different. We knew it was going to be different. Florida destroyed Oklahoma State. And I remember after the game listening to the post-game radio show, and they were asking Spurrier about the Cowboys. He goes, we knew they weren't very good. So I said, man, things are about to get different around here, and certainly they did. Number 3, West Texas State. This was in 1982. Some of you may have been there. My recollection, maybe you can correct me on this, is that West Texas State scored a touchdown, kicked an onside kick, scored again. They were up on Florida 14-7. Everybody's going, oh, no, what's going on here? How can this be happening? This team just beat USC and Miami. But Florida went on to gain 774 yards in that game, won the game easily, still the all-time record for most total yards by a Florida football team, and one that may never be broken. Number 4, Air Force, 1968. That was supposed to be the year of the Gator. There's a lot of those back in those days when it was supposed to be the year of the Gator. And the Gators opened with the Air Force down in Tampa. Curtis Martin ran the kickoff back for a touchdown, but the Gators came back and won it. What I remember about this game the most, though, is that their Falcon disappeared. They couldn't find him after the game, and then it somehow found its way back to Colorado Springs. That just, to me, is mind-boggling, but maybe it's not even true, but that's what I heard, or that's the story that was being told. And number 5, New Mexico. This was 1989, and New Mexico wasn't anything special. I'm pretty sure it was a homecoming game, and they were right in there with Florida. They kept scoring, and Florida was having to fight back, but Florida prevailed. I think it was 28-21 because of a junior quarterback named Emmitt Smith. I said quarterback, I meant running back. Emmitt Smith, 316 rushing yards in that day, still the Florida record by far. I mean, the next one is 82 yards behind. He, of course, has that one, too, as a freshman against Alabama. But they needed every one of those 316 yards for Emmitt Smith. Tremendous game for him, and it's one that, it kind of sticks in your head. So that's the list for today. No show next week. I'm taking a couple of days off, going to deal with a few things personally. I know you guys will miss me, but I'm going to take a couple of days off next week. So no show next week, but then we'll be back with you. And then, of course, 2 to go after that. Of course, we have the revenue game there, and then, of course, Florida State after that. So look forward to seeing you then. Until then, Pat Dooley, sports columnist of the Gainesville Sun, saying so long from the Sunshine State.